Even the country's oldest Latino civil rights group came out against it, yet AOC keeps defending it, saying gender is fluid, language is fluid. Yes, and Latino voters are fluid. And then there's abortion. A difficult issue for the Democrats to lose on, but they're trying. For decades, liberals have said if only men could get pregnant, this wouldn't even be an issue.
It's been nearly a year since Bill Maher ramped up his campaign against what he calls the excesses of woke ideology, and it's clear he's not backing down. His latest focus? Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who's been making headlines coast to coast, championing progressive policies with the same relentless energy. But Maher's not impressed. He sees through the slogans and calls out what he views as the growing disconnect between that message and the reality many voters are facing. If you're ready to dive into this latest political face-off, make sure to hit subscribe, because this one gets fiery.
Every month I see a new poll reporting how much Latinos despise the woke term Latinx. It's about as popular with them as a reboot of Speedy Gonzales. Even the country's oldest Latino civil rights group came out against it, yet AOC keeps defending it, saying gender is fluid, language is fluid. Yes, and Latino voters are fluid.
Let's rewind to where it started. True to form, Bill Maher posed the uncomfortable questions that others avoid. His latest target, AOC's insistence on pushing an agenda that, he argues, is losing traction with the average voter. Maher questioned why a politician would double down on policies that many see as polarizing or detached from everyday concerns. And instead of pausing for self-reflection, AOC continues to charge ahead, convinced she's on the righteous path. But Maher's not just offering casual commentary. What follows is a sharp, relentless takedown that strips away the theatrics and gets to the core. And trust me, you'll want to stay locked in, because what comes next? It's nothing short of a political reckoning.
Then there's abortion. A difficult issue for the Democrats to lose on, but they're trying. For decades, liberals have said if only men could get pregnant, this wouldn't even be an issue. And abortion rights are women's rights. Well, that's wrong now. Or as the kids say, hold up. When the wokey end of the progressive spectrum talks about abortion now, they shy away from that word, women, and prefer terms like birthing people.
One of the flashpoints Maher keeps highlighting is the party's refusal to address some of the most basic cultural and scientific truths. Take the recent debates over gender identity. What once was settled biological understanding is now wrapped in political minefields. Maher points out that the inability, or unwillingness, of Democratic leaders to answer simple questions about definitions has created a credibility gap. Voters aren't rejecting compassion or inclusivity. They're pushing back on being told that facts are offensive. The fallout? Major electoral losses and a public increasingly skeptical of the party's messaging. Not because they're intolerant, but because they're tired of being treated like asking questions is a sin.
And more of them now than ever are identifying as Republican. So are Asian Americans, whose support for Democrats is down 16 points since the last election. A lot of that is because, in the name of achieving equity in schools, Democrats in deep blue cities have made it a mission to eliminate the advanced programs at which Asian kids.
And that's what happens when political leaders overplay their hand. AOC and others moved forward with such confidence, assuming unwavering support in deep blue regions. But what they didn't anticipate was quiet resistance turning into loud rejection. Voters who once backed their causes started jumping ship, and fast. Where did they go? To the very political spaces they were once told to fear. This wasn't a gentle drift. It was a major shift. Those rock-solid Democratic strongholds? They're starting to show cracks. And now the bigger question looms. Was this a misstep or the beginning of the unraveling of AOC's influence? Stick around, because Maher's not done. His next point may just shift the whole conversation.
Last week, an 85% Latino congressional district on the border with Mexico, which had always voted heavily Democratic, flipped to the red team. And the campaign manager for the losing Democrat said, "We gave up a reliably Democratic congressional seat for no reason at all. We deserve to know why." Well, aside from your terrible attitude, I'm going to tell you why. Because these voters stop seeing your candidate as their lawyer.
You may have heard Maher drop lines like, my lawyer versus their lawyer. And while it sounds playful, it cuts deep. He's making a blunt observation. Voters want representatives who advocate for them, not lecture them. But AOC and her progressive allies seem more focused on grandstanding than listening. Instead of aligning with working Americans, they've leaned into complex rhetoric and sweeping policies that often feel disconnected from daily struggles. Maher doesn't just criticize. He outlines the growing gulf between what voters expect and what they're actually getting. AOC may claim to speak for the people, but increasingly, she's sounding more like someone defending a courtroom ideology few asked for. And Maher's final verdict? It's coming, and it's going to sting.
If you're a parent and wanted schools to reopen a lot sooner than they did after COVID shutdowns, or think maybe your kid is getting a bad education, partly because it's nearly impossible to fire a lousy teacher, yeah, you're going to say, congratulations, teachers, you got yourself a good lawyer. The Democratic Party's always got your back, 100%. But I've noticed my kid is kind of an idiot. So I may be looking for new representation.
It wasn't just Latino voters that grew frustrated. Education policy became another sore spot. Under progressive guidance, schools introduced reforms that, while well-intentioned, had unintended consequences. Removing tools to hold underperforming educators accountable might have sounded like fairness on paper, but in reality, it left students behind. According to national assessments, math scores for 13-year-olds dropped sharply. By 9 points in just 3 years, the steepest decline in decades. Reading scores slid too. And while AOC and others keep promoting equity through fiery speeches, parents are looking at report cards and asking what went wrong. This isn't just about classroom politics. It's about generational impact. Can the progressive wing of the party pivot in time? Or is this a deeper failure that could haunt Democrats for years to come? Maher's next take might answer that.
President Biden wants to cancel hundreds of billions of dollars in student debt. Okay, but the poorer 2/3 of American kids who don't get a college degree are going to say, why should the people who didn't go to college and make less money subsidize the people who did go and make more? You want me to chip in so some liberal arts college can build a bigger rock wall? You're not my lawyer.
Sometimes the policy proposals from the far left are so bold they border on satire. Maher has often pointed to moments like the defund the police movement, which quickly lost steam as crime rose in major cities, or ideas like canceling rent without a long-term economic plan. Then came attempts to eliminate standardized testing, as if expecting academic performance were some kind of oppression. Maher sums it up with biting wit. It's like watching a masterclass in losing the middle ground. These policies, ambitious as they are, often collapse under their own weight. Yet somehow, the same voices keep asking for the reins of power again. It's political theater all right, and Maher's not letting them exit stage left without getting called out loud and clear.
When he ran in 2020, Bernie Sanders said he would legalize marijuana on his first day as president, but that the business of selling pot would be awarded first to those who suffered most from the drug war. And you know what? I can't argue with that instinct. The drug war has been a horrendous instrument of prejudice and punishment for racial minorities, so it seems fair that they jump the line for weed franchises the way Indians did for casinos. But it's also what's holding up Republican support for legalizing weed nationally, which would be good for everybody. And these are the hard, practical choices the Democrats have to weigh.
At the heart of Maher's argument is a simple but powerful idea. If Democrats want a real comeback, they have to leave behind the echo chamber. That means ditching the slogans, stepping off the moral pedestal, and actually listening to the people they claim to represent. Real conversations, real communities, and real humility. It's not about abandoning principles. It's about reconnecting with everyday struggles. Because when politicians rely on think tanks and filtered polling data, they miss what voters are really saying. Maher's warning is urgent. If Democrats keep misreading the room, they're going to find themselves speaking to an empty one. The clock is ticking, and course correction isn't optional. It's critical.
As with all these issues, the wavering voter is saying to her lawyer, the Democratic Party, hey, so happy for you that you have so many other clients and that you care so much about their problems. and all the pro bono work you do, but you're supposed to be my lawyer. The Democrats need to be like the lawyers you see on billboards. You hurt, we fight.
And that brings us to a truth few are willing to say out loud. No one understands the stakes better than immigrants. They don't risk their lives crossing deserts, oceans, and borders to chase identity politics. They come for freedom, stability, and opportunity. The things America still represents to much of the world. If this country were as oppressive as some activists claim, people wouldn't be flooding its borders, they'd be fleeing it. The disconnect is staggering. While some progressive voices criticize the nation from taxpayer-funded platforms, immigrants know firsthand what real oppression looks like. And they know that, for all its flaws, America still stands as a beacon. They're not drawn by theory, they're drawn by truth. That's why Maher's critiques resonate so deeply. Because behind the noise, the slogans and the hashtags, there's still a country worth fighting for. And those who've lived without it? They know exactly how valuable it is. So ignore the distractions. America may not be perfect, but it's still unmatched in its promise. And that's why people come. That's why it still matters.